Hare Krishna. We are live here in Bhaktiville. This is Dasi Lane, you from life here with Mimulus, with Grease Cooks and Kandita. They're streaming there in Facebook listening. Are continuing our reading of the teachings of Lord Caitanya. The Swami Prabhupada. And continuing a chapter that we didn't finish last week. 3 times Why Study Vedanta Sutra. Page 5, PDF. Beginning with, when art thou the Supreme Lord? Somebody's mic is still on. If you could mute your mics, that would be great. All right, here we go. That the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, is all perfect, is confirmed in all Shruti mantras. It is said in the Shruti mantras that the all-perfect Lord glanced over matter, and thus he created all living beings. The living beings are parts and parcels of the Lord, and he impregnates the vast material nature with the seeds of spiritual sparks, and thus the creative energies are set in motion for so many wonderful creations. One atheist friend argued that God is no more expert than the manufacturer of a subtle watch, which moves by delicate machineries. We had to reply to the atheist friend that God is still a greater mechanic than the watchmaker, in the sense that he creates one machine in duplicate male and female forms. The male and female forms of different grades of machinery go on producing innumerable quantities of similar machines without the further attention of God. If a man could manufacture such sets of duplicate machines to produce further machines without any attention from the original manufacturer, then of course a man could equal the intelligence of God. But that is not possible. Each and every one of the imperfect machines have to be handled individually by the mechanic, for nobody can be equal in intelligence to God. Another name of God is therefore Asmaurda. Nobody is equal to or greater than him. Everybody has his equal or superior in intelligence, and nobody can claim that he has neither. This fact is corroborated in the Shruti mantras, where it is said that before the creation of the material universe, there was the Lord, who is the master of everything. The Lord instructed Brahma in the Vedic knowledge. That personality of Godhead has to be obeyed in all respects. Anybody who wants to become free of the material entanglement must, therefore, surrender unto him. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita also. Unless one surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is sure and certain that one must be bewildered, even if he happens to be a great mind. When the great minds surrender unto the lotus feet of Vasudeva and know fully that Lord Vasudeva is the cause of all causes, as is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, then only can such great minds become Mahatmas, or the truly broad-minded. But such a broad-minded Mahatma is rarely seen. Only the Mahatmas, however, can understand the Supreme Lord, who is the absolute personality of Godhead, the primeval cause of all creations. He is Parama, or ultimate truth, because all other truths are relatively dependent on him. Because he is the source of everyone's knowledge, he is omniscient, and for him there is no illusion, as there is for the relative knower. Some scholars of the Mayavadi school argue that Srimad Bhagavatam was not compiled by Sri Vyasadeva, and some of them suggest that this book is a creation in the modern age of somebody by the name of Gopadev. Srila Sridhar Swami in order to refute this meaningless argument, says that there is reference to the Bhagavatam in many other of the oldest Puranas. The first shloka or verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam is begun with the Gayatri mantra, and there is reference to this as the Matsya Puranam, the oldest Puranam. In that Puranam, it is said, with reference to the context of Gayatri mantra in the Bhagavatam, that there are many narrations of spiritual instructions, beginning with the Gayatri mantra, and also the history of Vitrasura is in Gayatri mantra. Anyone who makes a gift of this great work on the full moon day attains to the highest perfection of life by going back to Godhead. Similarly, there is a reference to this Bhagavatam in other Puranas, where it is said that the work consists of 12 cantos and 18,000 shlokas. In the Padma Puranam, also, there is reference to the Bhagavatam during the conversation of Gautam and Maharaj Ambarish. The king was advised therein to read regularly Srimad Bhagavatam if he had all desired liberation from the material bondage. Under the circumstances, there is no doubt regarding the authority of Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam. Within 500 years from the present era, many scholars, even after the time of Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, have made elaborate commentaries on the Bhagavatam Puranam with unique scholarship, and the serious student will do well to make an attempt to go through them, to relish more happily the transcendental messages from the Bhagavatam. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur specifically deals with the original and pure sex psychology, adhirasa, devoid of all mundane inebriety. The whole material world is turning on the basic principle of sex life. In the modern human civilization, sex life is the central point of all activities. Wherever we may turn our face, we see a great prominence of sex life. Therefore, sex life is not unreal. Its true reality is experienced in the spiritual world. Material sex life is but a perverted reflection of the original. The original, therefore, is in the absolute truth, and the absolute truth cannot be impersonal and have a sense of pure sex life. The impersonal monist philosophy has given an indirect impetus to the abominable mundane sex life, because it has given too much stress to the impersonality of the ultimate truth. The result is that men who lack knowledge have accepted the perverted sex life as all in all, without any information about the actual spiritual form of sex. There is a distinction between sex life in the diseased condition of material life and that in the spiritual existence. The Srimad Bhagavatam will gradually elevate the unbiased reader to the highest perfectional stage of transcendence, above the three modes of material activities, namely fruitive actions, speculative philosophy, and worshipping the functional deities as they are inculcated in the Vedic verses. Srimad Bhagavatam is the embodiment of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. It is therefore situated in a superior position over all other Vedic literature. The term religiousness includes four primary subjects, namely 1, pious activities, 2, economic development, 3, satisfaction of the senses, and 4, liberation from the material bondage. Religious life is distinguished from the irreligious life of barbarism, and human life begins from the life of religiousness. The four principles of animal life, eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, are common both to the animals and the human beings. Religion is the extra concern of the human being, and without religion, the so-called human life is no better than that of the animal. Therefore, in real human society, There is some form of religion aiming at self-realization with reference to the eternal relationship with God. In the lower stage of human civilization, there is always a competition in lording it over material nature. Or in other words, there is a continuous rivalry for satisfying the senses. And, driven by this consciousness of sense gratification, religiousness is performed. Pious activities, or religious functions, are performed with an aim generally for some material gain. If some material gain is obtainable in another way, then the so-called religiousness is neglected, as we can see in the modern human civilization. The economic desires being seemingly fulfilled in another way, nobody is interested in religion now. The church, mosque, or the temple is practically always a vacant place, and the people are more interested in the factories, shops, and cinemas than in the religious places formerly erected by the forefathers of different paths of religiousness. This proves definitely that religiousness is performed for economic development, and economic development is needed for sense gratification. And where one is baffled in the matter of sense gratification, he takes to the cause of salvation in order to become one with the supreme whole. Therefore, all these stages are different examples of the same aim of life, namely sense gratification. In the Vedas, the above-mentioned 4 activities are prescribed in a regulative way, so that there may not be any undue competition for the purpose of sense gratification. The Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental to all these sense-gratifying activities of the material world. It is purely transcendental literature, understandable by a particular class of men known as devotees of the Lord, who are above the competitive field of sense gratification. In the material world, there is keen competition between the animals, between men, on communities, or even nations in this sense gratifying activity. But the devotees of the Lord are above this. Devotees have nothing to compete for with the materialists, because they are on the path back to Godhead, where everything is eternal, full, and blissful. Such transcendentalists are 100% non-envious, and therefore pure in heart. In the material world, everyone is envious of everyone, and therefore there is competition. But the transcendentalists, or devotees of the Lord, are not only freed from all material enviousness, but they are kind to everyone, endeavoring to establish a competitionless society with God in the center. The socialist idea of society is artificially competitionless, because even in the socialistic state, there is competition for the post of dictator. The fact is, therefore, that the state of sense gratification is the order of materialistic life. Take it either from the Vedas or from the common human activities. As mentioned above, there are 3 divisions of the Vedas, namely the stage of fruitive activities for getting advancement to better planets like heaven, etc. And above this, there are the activities of worshiping different demigods with the same intentions, of getting advanced into the different planets of the different types of demigods. And lastly, there are the activities of reaching the absolute truth in his impersonal feature, to become one with him. The impersonal aspect of the absolute truth is not the last word. Above the impersonal feature is the Paramatma, or supersoul aspect. And above that, there is the personal quality of the absolute truth. Srimad Bhagavatam gives us information about the absolute truth in his personal quality, beyond the impersonal aspect. It is therefore greater than the topics of impersonal philosophical speculations, and as such, Srimad Bhagavatam is given higher status than the Jnanakanda division of the Vedas. It is higher than the Karmakanda division as well as the Jnanakanda division, and it is above the Upanishad Kanda division. Because Srimad Bhagavatam recommends the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, the Divine Son of Vasudeva. In the Karmakanda of the Vedas, there is competition for supremacy in reaching the heavenly planets for better sense gratification. And the same competition is there in the Jnanakanda or Upasana Kandas. But Srimad Bhagavatam is above all of them because it aims at the supreme truth, the substance or the root of all categories. In other words, from Srimad Bhagavatam, we can know the substance as well as the relativities in the true sense and perspective. The substance is the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and all emanations from Him are relativities in different forms of energies. The living entities are also related to all different types of His energies, and therefore nothing is different from His substance. But at the same time, the energies are different from the substance. This concept is not self-contradictory. Srimad Bhagavatam explicitly deals with this simultaneously one and different philosophy of the Vedanta Sutra, which begins with the Janmadhyasya Sutra. Such knowledge of the simultaneously one and different nature of the Absolute Truth is really for the well-being of the knower. Otherwise, the mental speculators mislead the people wrongly, establishing the energy as absolute. When it is understood, the truth becomes more pleasing than the imperfect concept of monism or dualism. Development of this consciousness leads one at once to the stage of freedom from the threefold miseries. The threefold miseries are 1. In relation to the body and the mind, 2. In relation to our dealings with other beings, and 3. In relation to the acts of providence, over which we have no control. Srimad Bhagavatam begins from the surrender of the living entity unto the absolute person, with clear consciousness of the devotee's oneness with the absolute, and at the same time his awareness of his eternal position of servitorship toward the Lord. In the material conception of his life, he thinks of himself falsely as the Lord of all he surveys, and therefore he is always troubled with the above-mentioned threefold miseries of life. But as soon as he comes to know his real position of transcendental servitude, he at once becomes freed from all the above-mentioned miseries. The servitor position of the living being is wasted in the material concept of his life. With a false sense of overlordship, the living being must offer his service to the relative energies of matter. When the servitorship is transferred unto the Lord in pure consciousness of spiritual identity, the living entity at once becomes freed from the encumbrances of material affliction. Over and above this, Srimad Bhagavatam is the personal commentary on the Vedanta Sutra by the great author himself, and that also in the mature stage of his spiritual realization through the mercy of Narada. Sri Vyasadeva is the authorized incarnation of Narayan, the personality of Godhead. Therefore, there is no question about his authority. He is the author of all other Vedic literature, but surpassing all of it, he recommends the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. In other Puranas, there are different methods of worshipping the demigods, but in the Bhagavatam, only the Supreme Personality of Godhead is mentioned. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the whole body, and the demigods are the different parts of the body. As such, by worshipping the Supreme Lord, there is no need to worship the demigods, because the Supreme Lord is at once fixed in the heart. So Caitanya Mahaprabhu has recommended the Srimad Bhagavatam as the spotless Puranam, as distinguished from all other Puranas. The mode of receiving the transcendental message is to get it through the ears by submissiveness. No challenging mode can help the receiver in getting or realizing the transcendental message. Therefore, in the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, one particular word is used for our proper guidance. This particular word is shushrusu. One must be anxious to hear about the transcendental message. And this qualification of hearing with interest is the prime qualification for assimilating transcendental knowledge. Unfortunately, some persons are not interested in giving patient hearing the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. The process is simple, but the application is difficult. Unfortunate persons will find enough time to hear ordinary social, political, and all sorts of idle talks, but when they are invited to attend a meeting of the devotees assembled to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, the unfortunate creatures will either be reluctant to attend such a meeting, or they will indulge in hearing the portion they are unfit to enter into. Professional readers of the Bhagavatam indulge in the confidential topics of the pastimes of the Supreme Lord, which seemingly appear to be sex literature. Srimad Bhagavatam is meant to be heard from the beginning, and the class of persons who are fit to assimilate it are also mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, first chapter, and second verse. A bona fide audience for hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam is generated after many pious deeds. But an intelligent person, by thoughtful discretion, can believe in the assurance of the great sage Vyasadeva and give patient hearing to the message of Srimad Bhagavatam in order to realize directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And without undergoing the different Vedic stages, one can at once be lifted to the position of Paramahamsa, simply by agreeing to receive patiently the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. Sages at Naimisharanya confirmed before Sutta Goswami that they were increasing in their intense desire to understand the Srimad Bhagavatam. They were hearing from Sutta Goswami about Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They were never satiated by such discussion, because persons who are really attached to Krishna never cease to want to hear more and more about Krishna. Lord Caitanya therefore advised Prakashananda Saraswati, quote, always read Srimad Bhagavatam. Sorry, my iPad moved. I'll start that quote over. Quote, always read Srimad Bhagavatam and try to understand each and every verse, and you will actually understand the Brahma Sutra. You say you are very anxious about the study of Vedanta Sutra, but you cannot understand Vedanta Sutra without understanding Srimad Bhagavatam. End quote. He also advised Prakashananda Saraswati to always chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Quote, and by doing that, very easily you will be liberated. And after liberation, you will be eligible to achieve the highest goal of life, love of Godhead. End quote. The Lord then recited many verses from authoritative scriptures like Srimad Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and the Sringatapani. Quoted a verse from Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, 54th verse, that when one actually becomes self-realized, knowing he is Brahman, he becomes happy and joyful and has no more cause for lamentation and hankering. Such a person sees all living entities on an equal level, and he becomes a pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, in the Nashringatapani, it is said that when a person is actually liberated, Then he can understand the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Lord, and thus become engaged in his devotional service. He also quoted a verse from the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in which Shukadeva Goswami admits that, although he was elevated to the liberated stage and free from the clutches of Maya, still he was attracted by the transcendental pastimes of Krishna. And as such, he studied Srimad Bhagavatam from his great father, Vyasadeva. He also quoted another shloka from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 15th chapter, about the Kumaras. When the Kumaras entered the temple of the Lord, they were attracted by the odor of flowers and tulsi leaves offered to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord with pulp of sandalwood, and simply being incensed by the aroma of such flowers and tulsi, their minds became inclined to the service of the Supreme Lord, although they were already liberated souls. Therefore, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 7th chapter, even if one is a liberated soul and is actually free from material contamination, still he becomes attracted to the devotional service of the Supreme Lord without any cause and without being hampered by any material propensities. God is so attractive, therefore he is called Krishna. Lord Caitanya was discussing the Atmarama verse from Srimad Bhagavatam with Prakashananda Saraswati. His admirer, the Maharashtrian Brahmin, related in the assembly that the Lord had already explained the verse in 64 different ways. All the people assembled there were very eager to hear again from the Lord about the different versions of the Atmarama shloka. And as they were so eager, Lord Caitanya explained the Atmarama shloka again in the same way that he had explained it before to Sanatana Goswami. All the people assembled there heard the explanation of the Atmarama shloka from the Supreme Lord, and they were amazed and considered that the Lord was nobody else than Sri Krishna himself. I think we'll stop there. We're a little short, a couple minutes short, but the next chapters won't be completed in 2 minutes. So, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Nityananda's appearance day is, Pandita, is it Sunday or Monday? Nityananda's appearance day. So, we have here on the altar, on the far left is Nityananda, and next to him is Lord Caitanya. So Nityananda's appearance day is Sunday or Monday. Check your local calendars. You're welcome, Kandita. So have a wonderful week. Oh, we have another person here. I didn't notice you came in. I have my chat box over it. You're welcome, Grace. Nice to see you.